I know. Some of you saw the title of this video and are convinced that it is a stretch. I mean, how can I claim that this one film is both the only one where Hugh Grant is truly charming and the best rom-com Julia Roberts has ever made, especially when quite a substantial percentage of rom-com lovers the world over seem to believe that this film is one of the most boring rom-coms ever. Well, for me at least, I think Notting Hill does a great blend of Hugh Grant's earnestness, meet a large dose of 90s nostalgia, and the sense of home it brings. There's Julia being larger than life and messy, which honestly is a great metaphor for how love itself is. And most importantly, it is a rom com that actually takes the time via the plot to earn the right to be called a rom com. It's a hodgepodge of things that has me making the declaration for this film as being the best of Hugh and Julia, making the most of their talents. And I will go into further details on that when we get to the part of the video where I am going to share my thoughts. Heads up, it's going to be a bit further down, so you can use the timestamps in the description if you just want to skip right over to that part of the video. Now, just in case this is your first time stumbling on my channel or on this particular video series, hello, I'm Noria, and welcome to Romcom Ganda Tuesday, where once a week I pick a romcom from the late 80s to the mid 2010s. Often it's a rewatch, on rare occasions it can be a first time watch. For Notting Hill, I watched it back when it got released, didn't actually enjoy it in my first time watch, never rewatched it because I just couldn't get the appeal, and then I chose it for Romcom Ganda Tuesday, sat with it, and by the gods, was it brilliant upon my rewatch. Anyway, as I was saying, I watched the chosen film and analyzed it to see how well they hold up years later, especially viewing them through my now adult and slightly more cynical lens. Please ignore the fact that you're getting this on a Wednesday. I had power issues yesterday. Now, kindly note for this series, I split these videos into three parts: the intro, which is what you're watching right now, the synopsis of the movie, and finally my thoughts. As such, I will have timestamps put in so you can navigate this video whichever way you choose. Now, before I move into the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content. A special shout out goes to Kat, Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses to mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, for example, early access to my regular content, membership and Patreon exclusive videos, live streams, maybe even get a shout out, the link to join is in the description bar. And with that said, Notting Hill opens on Hugh Grant's William Thacker, who owns and runs a bookstore, specifically a travel bookstore in Notting Hill, a district in West London. Now, I say specifically a travel bookstore because, as one would expect, sales aren't so good. And there is this repeat customer that keeps asking for actual novels, who cannot fathom that books that one can read when traveling, i.e., any book really, are different from actual travel books, which is what Will sells. Anyway, Will is a divorcee whose wife left him for someone who looks like Harrison Ford. And so now he shares his flat with Spike, a man who is as flaky as you can get. I mean, the dude is messy and sloppy and finds it difficult to remember two separate names, but is also entertaining as hell to watch on screen. Shout out to Reese Ifans for real. But back to Will. One day, world famous Hollywood actress Anna Scott, played by Julia Roberts, enters his shop and browses for a book. Will doesn't really recognize her outright, but makes conversation as he tries to convince her to pick up a better book instead. Of course, when a busted shoplifter recognizes Anna and asks her for an autograph, Will finally connects the dots. Shortly after Anna leaves, Will's colleague slash partner shows back up to the shop, and Will goes to get him some orange juice as he had requested, but then accidentally bumps into Anna and spills said orange juice all over her. He invites her to his flat, which was quite close to their location, where she gets to change her clothes, use his phone to call her ride, and before she leaves, she kisses him on impulse. Days later, Will, who is still thinking about Anna, finally learns from Spike's tenant that she had called 3 days prior and left a message for him. Will calls back, and Anna invites him over to the Ritz where she is currently staying. When Will shows up, he is mistaken for a reporter and finds himself pulled into the press junket slash promotion for Anna's latest film. And so he goes along with things, stating that he's a writer from Horse and Hound magazine and gets ushered in to see Anna, where they chat. He eventually gets the chance to ask Anna out for the night, but then remembers that it is his sister Oni's birthday party that same night. And just as he states that he will call Oni to explain that he cannot make it, which seriously, dude, Anna cuts in and agrees to be his date for Oni's party. They show up to Will's friends Max and Bella's home where Oni's party is being held. Honey shows up later, as does Bernie, and all of Will's friends and family are initially shocked at seeing a world famous actress right there with them as Will's date. Except for Barney, who doesn't immediately recognize her but is well and truly stunned when it finally clicks for him. Now, although they are all surprised at first when they see her, things calm down pretty quickly and she fits in with the rest of the group. After the dinner, she and Will go on a walk and then sneak into a private park where Anna kisses him a second time. A couple of days later, Will and Anna are having lunch together at a restaurant where they overhear a group of men talking about Anna as an actress. At first, they praise her body of work, but then the conversation quickly derails and they end up equating actresses' work to prostitution. Will stands up and confronts the men, and although they initially laugh him off, they are immediately stunned when Anna shows up to apologize for Will being testy. That's just how he is, and then she proceeds to inform them that they have peanut sized dicks. After they walk out of the restaurant, Anna invites Will to join her in her hotel room. She heads upstairs first to freshen up, but when Will arrives, it's to find out that Anna is not alone. She has a surprise guest, her movie star boyfriend, Jeff, played by Alec Baldwin, who has shown up unexpectedly from the US. Jeff is dismissive the way in which rich and famous people are to those who work in the service industry, and Will leaves. 6 months pass by and we see Will's friends all try and fail in arranging dates for him with the hope that he would move on from Anna, but none of the women catch his eye. And then one day, out of the blues, a distraught Anna shows up to his apartment wanting to hide at his place because there's a scandal with regards to some nude photographs she had taken before she became famous. She apologizes about Jeff, mentions that their relationship is over for real, and Will's place basically becomes a safe space for her. As she hides away, she gets to bathe, she eats, she practices her lines with Will for an upcoming movie, and they chat about the print of the Mark Chagall's painting that Will has on his wall. Happiness isn't happiness without a violin playing good. Later that night, they have sex. The next morning, the doorbell rings and Will opens it in his drawers to find a storm of paparazzi on his doorstep. Anna, who has no idea what happened, opens the door shortly after he does, also in her state of undress, to be met with paparazzi. She flips about the situation, blaming Will, specifically Spike, who she believes is the one that tipped off the press. When Will tries to calm her down and ask her to have some perspective on things, she informs him that he would never really get it since this is her life. The invasion is something that she's had to deal with constantly for over a decade. And because pictures and newspapers last forever, she would not be able to get away from this, something that she doesn't think Will would ever understand. She ultimately walks away. Of course, after she does, Spike does confirm to Will that he might have let things slip a bit whilst he was at the pub. It's Spike. Now, more time passes. Will is miserable and then finally informs his friends that he's working on getting over Anna. Of course, this getting over only lasts long enough for him to hear from them that Anna is back in London filming her latest project. He shows up to her set unannounced, and when Anna sees him, she asks him to wait for her. Will does, but then he overhears her being dismissive of him to an actor she's about to have a scene with, and he walks away. The next day, Anna shows up to the bookshop with a wrapped package in hand. It's the original Mark Chagall painting, which she took down from her apartment to give Will instead because she thought of him whenever an Every time she saw it, she asks if he's willing to give her another chance. And Will mentions what he had overheard between her and her co actor. Anna explains that she just wanted to keep her private life private and tells Will that she loves him. But Will refuses, saying that he doesn't think that he will recover should she inadvertently, as she's wont to do, leave him again. Will meets up later with his friends and basically brings them up to speed with what has happened. They are all in support for his decision. But when Spike comes in, as he was the only one running late and was then told what happened, he calls Will a daft prick. That turns out to be the jolt that has Will chasing after Anna to try and get her back. They get to the Ritz, but are informed that she's holding a press conference at the Savoy. When Will arrives, Anna is currently fielding questions from journalists pertaining to the break she's taken from acting and her leaving London that very night. One of the journalists finally asks her about her relationship with the man in whose flat she had stayed in that she had been photographed in, i.e., Will. She says that they are good friends, and Will takes the time to chime in with his question, asking if she would reconsider them being more than friends if the man admits to being a daft prick and wants her back. She says that she would, and then talks to her agent to ask the reporter who had initially asked her how long she was going to be in London for. Now, her previous answer to that had been that she was going back that night, but when she's asked again, she responds indefinitely and smiles at Will. The reporters, who are finally able to recognize Will, take pictures of him and Anna smiling besottedly at each other. Sometime later, Will and Anna get married, as do Spike and Oni. Will follows Anna to her movie premieres, and finally, we wrap up with Anna visibly pregnant as she and Will are back at the private park they had snuck into on their first date. The end. Now, before I get started, I would like to state at this point that what I consider a rom-com needs to have both romance between the main characters and humor to balance it off. And of course, the expectation is for these characters to have a happy ending. That is the bread and butter of the romance genre, after all, which is what separates it from a typical love story. I say it all the time, but a happy for now or a happy ever after is a prerequisite for a romance, as agreed upon by the romance writers of America. This is different from a love story, which doesn't need that happy ever after conclusion, which is why, for example, Nicholas Sparks' novels and their movie adaptations can be read as love stories, but not necessarily seen as romance. I am looking at you, A Walk to Remember. And so, therefore, when I make the claim, as I did at the start of the video, that I consider Notting Hill to be Julia Roberts' best rom-com to date, I actually do mean that. I know some people consider My Best Friend's Wedding as being her best rom-com, but it never quite fits for me because Jules doesn't actually get with Michael in that film. So it doesn't count as a Julia Roberts rom-com in my book. Now, if the rom-com nature of it is meant to refer to Michael and Kimmy on the other hand, that is a whole other proposition which I can get behind, except I still don't consider Michael a good match for Kimmy, and I don't think it really plays as a good rom-com for Cameron Diaz either, especially not when the mask is there and her meet-cute with Luke Wilson in Charlie's Angels also exists. But sorry, I digress. I personally think that Julia Roberts' character of Anna Scott is one that makes the story so goddamn interesting for me, because with her we get to see this larger than life presence who is also very flawed. In fact, one could say one of the big things that Anna desires in this movie is to be seen, understood, and loved regardless. And all of this exists amidst the fact that she's quite a flawed character. Hell, some viewers outrightly consider her a bitch. Some even think she's toxic, which I'm not sold on. Is she messy? Yes, she's a global superstar who has been chasing that fame since she was a teenager, who the minute she was able to cinch it, hasn't been seen as a person, as her own person ever since. She's either the dream version that a lot of her male fans get to masturbate to, whilst at the same time basically equating her to a prostitute, or she's a meal ticket for the paparazzi who chase after her, even going as far as digging for the nude photo shoot she had done back when she was still a teenager and needed money to survive. Or she's the arm candy actress that is meant to always be available to the much bigger movie star who chooses to date her. And I've seen people mention that her dating of Alec Baldwin's character was her cheating on on Will and they hate her for it because she lied to Will. And I think a lot of people ignored the apology she made when she came back around to Will, where she explains that her and Jeff are dating, but it's more of her being available at Jeff's whim. And so, therefore, Jeff controls their relationship, and the long period of him not communicating with her, which she had assumed meant that they were no longer together, went out of the window because he showed up out of the blues, meaning that now, according to his timeline, they were back on. And I can see how that was complicated. But most importantly, she and Will just started seeing each other. I think that is something that a lot of viewers miss out on. She's met him like 3 times before this point. The first being their meet cute, which, she steps into his bookstore to buy a book, which was then followed shortly afterwards when he bumps into her again, not even an half hour later, and spills orange juice on her. Their second official meeting happens 3 days later when Spike finally relays to Will that he had gotten a call from her, and he shows up at her hotel at the Ritz, which was where he then had the chance to invite her to his sister's birthday. And then the birthday happens, and afterwards they have their walk in the park. The third time they meet is at the lunch date with the Dicks, who were equating her work as an actress to prostitution. Will defends her. She defends herself as well. They head out, at which point she then invites him upstairs, and boom, the boyfriend who has ignored her all this while was back with the expectation that things were going to pick up from where he had left them off. I mean, from the day they first met to when all of this is revealed is barely what? 5, 6 days. I can see why she might still be considering, but I can also understand why a lot of people felt like she didn't tell Will that she had a boyfriend and hated her as a result of it. There's also her anger about the paparazzi, which, mind you, I did think was justified because let us be real, Spike did run his mouth at the pub. That is how the Paps were able to track down Will's home. And I do belong to the school of thought that Will should have, I don't know, told her that there were paparazzi at the other end of the door. Why the hell did he not communicate and have her be blindsided? That for me is what she was reacting to in that moment. Anybody that read that scene as her being needlessly mean clearly has never seen The Bodyguard starring Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, because Whitney's character in that film, now she could be mean. She was bitchy and cocky and guts. I loved her regardless. She was incredible. Her character was fantastic. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Anna is this larger than life imperfect woman who finds love regardless of her hangups. And Julia Roberts in this movie was able to portray her in a way that gave that character the heart, the twinkle in her eye, but also those moments of vulnerability that bled through when she was sad, when she was upset, when she was reminiscent. She plays that guarded superstar who just wants to be seen and loved very well. She perfectly captures the theme song for the movie. She may be the face I can't forget, the trace of pleasure or regret, maybe my treasure or the price I have to pay. She may be the song that summer sings, maybe the chill that autumn brings, maybe 100 different things within the measure of a day. She may be the beauty or the beast, maybe the famine or the feast, may turn each day into a heaven or a hell. She may be the mirror of my dream, the smile reflected in a stream. She may not be what she may seem inside her shell. I am sorry. The song is one of my absolute favorites. It praises the complexity of her character, which, I love. Which brings me to you, Grant, who gets to be this version of himself that I find very charming in this film. It is his earnestness that bleeds through from the very moment we meet him. Now, I know a lot of people think that he has no spine in this, no backbone in this film. And while they are allowed to read him that way, I think especially in today's world where we have so much red pill content about the way men and boys should be macho to this toxic degree, to have A character like Will, who is so earnest, who wears his heart on his sleeve, who just wants a chance to have love and be loved, I think it's incredible. And to have Hugh Grant portray that character, it is so vastly different from his smarmy ass self in the Bridget Jones movies, or even the brief glimpse we got of him in Love Actually, with the power imbalance of him being the prime minister, chasing after a member of his staff. Will Thacker is different. His idealism is such a perfect contrast to the slightly pessimistic state in which Anna navigates the world. It says a lot, and it's quite different from what is usually portrayed in rom-coms, where the person with the guard up, who has a more pessimistic take on the world and the experience present within it, is the female character, whilst the idealist, the one who sees the good in everybody and everything, is the male love interest instead. It's a subversion of things that we get to see with Will, which I think Hugh Grant was able to portray to perfection. Now, if you speak to those who don't like this film, I've seen a variety of complaints, right? From Hugh Grant's Will Thacker lacking any sort of backbone to Julia Roberts and a Scott being a bitch. And then you have another group that simply find the movie itself boring. And yet, for me, it is that boringness that appeals to me the most, that has me sitting with this movie. There is a quietness, a mundane bend to the love that we get to see Will and Hannah have on screen that delights me, actually. I think it's best captured by the line on the bench that they stumble on after they sneak into the somewhat private park. For June, who loved this garden, from Joseph, who always sat beside her. I think the line perfectly captures the love that is being portrayed on screen within the movie, whereby this unknown person, Joseph, is there present for June, who is able to fully express who she is and her love for the garden. Not only does he accompany her, but he also creates the space where she gets to be without judgment, with the knowledge that she has his support. That is what we are meant to see reflected with Will and Anna as well. That is the portrayal of their love that we get to see on screen. It is why the bench scene matters, and also why at the end of the movie, the conclusion of it, after Will and Anna reunite, the movie took the time to show us more. Because when you think about it, it could have easily concluded, the movie could easily have concluded after the press conference. I mean, we already got the iconic and eventual memeable line of, I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. Like, I know people mock the L out of that line, but that and Anna's response of indefinitely when she's asked at the press conference how long she would be staying in London for. If you consider both scenes, they could have easily be they could have easily been the end of the movie. In fact, most rom-coms would have wrapped it up at this point in time. There was the confession, everything was reciprocated. There's the, reunion. End of story. Notting Hill makes a deliberate choice to continue to show us what comes after, to impress on the viewers the fact that the love that Will and Anna have and get to share with the world is one where she continues to pursue what interests her, what at least at the moment fulfills her, a bit of the garden that she's currently exploring and traversing, i.e., her life as an actress. One who, albeit, has started making meaningful movies that she loves and can be proud of, and the one who is by her side, her rock and steady companion, is her husband, Will, who gets to accompany her on this path. And then we continue with the film, with the camera that provides the lens with which we view Will and Anna's life and love for each other, where outside of the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, we see them together in the mundane, the everyday living and happiness of being at the park, surrounded by other families with their kids running about. And there is Anna and Will on a bench, maybe the bench. She's lying on him, is reading a book as he holds her. And there's meant to just be that bit of, even as the years pass and time changes, he's still there accompanying her, just like Joseph does with June on the bench on which their story had been carved. Now, is this the same bench that Anna is lying on as the curtains draw to a close on the movie? Is it June's bench, the one that was commissioned by Joseph? We don't know. We cannot tell exactly. It could be, or maybe it's an entirely separate bench. But even if it is, it's one where we see Anna at peace, not working, not having to hide from the paparazzi, not having every inch of herself being invaded. Instead, she looks and is at peace. She looks like she feels safe. And at her side is Will, who is accompanying her, just as he's done for the entirety of the film itself. Like I stated earlier, there is a mundane bent to the way in which Anna and Will's love for each other is depicted in this film, which I find myself appreciating. Whether it is their first date where he brings her over to his sister's birthday gathering and she gets the chance to be surrounded by people who are awestruck at her being present, yes, but because she is a world famous superstar, but also they give her her first ever glimpse of what a true community looks like after she got famous. They tease each other and bring her into the conversation as well. They are down to earth with the interactions that they have with her. She's Anna Scott, the movie star, but for that night, she's also Anna, Will's date to on his birthday dinner. The dinner itself isn't fancy or snazzy. It's at home. There's a burnt guinea fowl, even though she's a vegetarian. It is comforting. It is family. It's a gift that she gets to have, a normalcy that Will is able to give her. And that is what is the consistent thing about the way her love with Will develops. He gets to accompany her and give her a semblance of a normal life, which is what she desires. Whether it's the way he treats her at first, like any other customer, him opening his home to her and rambling about apricots soaked in honey, him clearly being aware of her, but not to the extent that he's rapidly following every bit of news and information about her. I still die laughing at will there be horses in your new film and her following it up with a it takes place in a submarine line shortly after the it took place in space line. It is home being the space, the one place she feels safe enough to come to when her world goes to shit. The fact that she knows that with Will she gets to have that companionship and care without the judgment that has dogged her entire life. Feeling safe and feeling cared for is a very strong part of being loved, and Anna gets to have that with Will. And I personally think that that is something that some viewers cannot stand about the film. The fact that it is quite clearly unequal in that regard. It looks like Will keeps doing all of this for Anna while she just exists and is pretty. And the movie doesn't take the time to show what Anna does for Will in turn to be deserving of the level of devotion he sends her way. And I think that is the point. Sometimes there isn't an equal give or take in the matter. What Will wants, what he communicates with his friends that he's always wanted with his partners, is for him to be chosen, for them to want him, to love him back. And that is what Anna does with him. The fact that she chose him is what matters to him, that she loves him back, something that he never got to experience with his other partners, is what he wants. They both get what they want. It might seem unequal to those of us looking in from the outside, but that is the nature of their love and their relationship. And I personally think it works. Also, shout out to the 90s way of reflecting lived in homes and spaces. Will's apartment was so delightfully messy and cluttered in a way that the more magazine photo shoot ready apartments that we get to see in modern day movies and shows can never be. Gods, I miss the clutter of the 90s. But of course, these are all just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however. If you watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might possibly potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.